Monday, April 12th. Near the street, surveyors came and read directions and pointed and chatted and measured, then went away. Later, they put down hot pink chalk lines or paint lines where the footings would be laid along the south side street. Below my balcony, I found these workers hoofing it the old-fashioned way, carrying the sheets of white styrofoam up the hill toward door 4. Behind them came 2 more guys carrying the ladder. I was curious to see where they were going to put this. Their destination was the 2-story Mikasa dining room bump out. 2 workers in harnesses spent the better part of a day installing all the different layers that it takes to make a roof secure and waterproof. Dawn was helping a resident and took this picture from her balcony of the multiple colors. Below my balcony, the rumble of Skytrack woke me up one morning, and this time they were loading bales of insulation. I think we're going to have many weeks of this activity. When they throw the trash out on the edge of the solarium and the wind blows, it feels a little like you live on the edge of a cotton field. Later in the morning, they started making the reverse Oreos, sheets of white styrofoam covered by that thick gray gall that will help it cling to the building. After it is completely covered, he hands it to the other worker under the scaffolding, who lays it against the building and pounds it into place. Working steadily, the building is beginning to turn from mustard to white. When we left campus, it felt very strange to not have security guards out front, just a lone orange cone. Along the sidewalk by door 3, we watched as they dug and tamped down dirt for the retaining wall footings. One morning I looked out and thought I saw snow. But it couldn't be. It was 60 degrees outside. Standing on the sidewalk, looking up, this guy was roughing up the styrofoam, getting ready for the next layer. Explained the snow. On Don's morning walk, he caught a picture of this building, and you could see how much was now white and what was still mustard colored. Digging and measuring continues farther east near the atrium as they prepare for footings. Don was walking up into Alta Vista and saw this crew repairing the asphalt. Residents are going to get their garages back. I know there is a lot of work going on inside the IL building. I just can't show you right now. Outside, Don saw them spraying waterproofing on the north side of the IL building. Good job, Don. This was nice composition. Lately, the wind has been driving us all a little batty, and it looks like it's making a lot of extra chores for the construction crew. Windswept night skies are an unexpected benefit from all of the windy days. Just for fun, let me tell you the story of our pug, Brandy. Don found her, and she had been born just before Christmas, and she was the size of the little gray beastie on the left. I couldn't get her till early February, and that was hard to wait, 'cause she was so cute. She had 5 brothers, and they ate more than their share of the food, so they got pretty chunky, and she ended up being pretty runty. When we brought her home, she was a little like those Beanie Babies, sort of floppy and a little wiggly. Being the only dog at the food bowl means she started looking chunky pretty soon. She loved to wrestle, and that's okay with someone your own size, but she often wanted to take up with the next door neighbor's German Shepherd, or heaven forbid, a St. Bernard. She went at top speed, and then all of a sudden it was like someone flipped a switch, and she just crashed wherever she was and started snoring like a freight train. American Kennel Club only recognizes black or fawn pugs, but we found out there are other colors out there. Chocolate pugs look like beautiful little candy bars. Albino pugs, or pink pugs as they're sometimes called, are very unusual. The blue eyes are a little eerie. Pugs that are totally black with no white markings are also very rare. Pugs normally want to please their owner, which explains why they let people dress them up in such weird costumes and don't wiggle or run away but sit there for pictures. I don't think Brandy would have sat still long enough for us to dress her up like this. She loved running in circles and thought it was a game when you tried to catch her. Wanting to please their owner also meant you could take all the loose skin and use them as a fidget toy or to take silly pictures, and they didn't seem to mind. You definitely didn't want to leave the food bag where they could get at it, or they would eat you out of house and home, and their bodies would be little barrels on skinny legs. Pugs are normally very gentle with children and quite protective, so puppies and babies get along well. They also want to make friends with any other pets in the household, although they're not quite sure what they're going to do with this funny rock. Warning, if you are ever foolish enough to put this many pugs in a bathtub of water, you had better have 2 people holding big towels in the doorway because they will jump out and run circles on your furniture. People may think pugs look all alike, but when you see these sitting on a bench, you can tell that their markings are quite different. A pile of pugs is called a grumble. They look pretty sleepy, not grumbly. I hope you enjoyed meeting Brandy. She's been gone 25 years, and I still miss her. New Mexico has the best sunsets.
Hi, we're here at Assisted Living, and we can see a lot more yellow than we saw last week. almost everywhere, but still lots of places to touch up. There's not much activity going on the building itself. As we pan around, we can see that they're working on the retaining wall, putting on 3 or 4 more courses. In fact, this is the week of the retaining wall. But we move on around the east end, and we can see they have no respect whatsoever for our carrot patch. I'm really worried. This is Jack Brayer. It's Wednesday, April 14th, 9:30 a.m., 52 degrees, and sunny. Up on the roof, we can see that the hatch is open. Nobody seems to be working on the roof, but they've built a nice little fence around that hatch. I think the OSHA rep has been in town. If you have a really sharp eye, you'll see some of the yellow packages of insulation showing up down on the ground, ready for use. Again, there's no plastic on the windows here, and the balconies still haven't been made completely yellow. Black Monster is still there, and still no movement. Anybody volunteer to go check his pulse? Look at the top right-hand corner of the building there. They still haven't made that yellow. First, this week, we check in on Jenny, the Mars helicopter. On last Friday, she flunked a test and her flight has been delayed at least until Wednesday, April 14th. There are not many more details available, and we'll keep an eye on her progress. Meanwhile, we are studying the retaining walls and the reinforcing rods placed inside them here at La Vidiana.
Retaining walls serve the important role of holding back soil and rock, just as dams hold back water. The first video in this series showed that granular materials such as soil and rock generate horizontal pressures that increase linearly with depth. Retaining walls must resist these pressures, and many strategies exist for doing so. In this video, we focus on the popular L-shaped cantilever design. If you were going to use an L-shaped wall to hold back soil and rock, as represented by these marbles, would you point the bottom leg towards the marbles or away from them? Many people would say that the base of the L should face away from the marbles. They probably realize that it is hard to tip the wall over towards the left if the bottom leg points in that direction. In engineering, we call tipping like this overturning. If the bottom leg points the other way around, it is easy to make the wall overturn. So easy, in fact, that I can do it with just a puff of air. It looks like the case is closed. Or is it? Before we declare a final verdict, let's use the model to find out what happens when the bottom leg points to the left away from the marbles. As we add marbles, we discovered that the horizontal forces they produce create yet another mode of failure, namely sliding of the wall, and this occurs when the marbles reach a depth of 3 centimeters. In the model, we can increase the friction between the retaining wall and the base by placing a rubber mat between them. You will have to do some extra reading if you want to find out how they achieve this end in the real world. As you can see, increasing the friction allows our model wall to support a noticeably greater depth of marbles, but it still eventually fails by overturning, in this case when the depth reaches 8 centimeters. Now let's turn the wall around, so its bottom leg points towards the right, the side where the marbles will be placed. We again use a rubber sheet to prevent sliding, and we add some marbles. As before, the marbles generate a horizontal force that depends on the marble depth. You might be surprised that this wall can hold back 11 centimeters of marbles before it overturns. Can you explain why the wall can resist a greater height of marbles when the bottom leg points towards them? Is there an additional force that comes into play? Recall that granular materials generate both horizontal and vertical pressures. When the bottom leg is oriented away from the marbles, overturning is resisted only by the weight of the wall itself, and so it overturns easily. When the bottom leg points towards the marbles, the vertical pressure from the marbles helps to keep the wall upright. The downward pressure also increases the friction between the bottom of the wall and the ground, thereby reducing the likelihood of sliding. When engineers design L-shaped retaining walls, they imagine them overturning about the point labeled Q. They first calculate how strongly the soil pressure will tend to make the wall rotate about Q. We call this tendency to tip an overturning moment, and we label it MO. Next, they figure out the stabilizing moment, MS, produced by the soil pushing downwards on the horizontal leg of the wall. Lastly, they make sure that the horizontal leg is long enough that the stabilizing moment is at least as large as the overturning moment. Then the retaining wall will be stable.
All right, welcome to Civil Engineering Academy. Today we're solving a problem from Geotech, and the problem states a reinforced concrete retaining wall is used to retain soil as shown. Drains are designed throughout the wall so that water pressure doesn't affect it. With the soil conditions shown, which of the following shows the correct placement of reinforcement? So it's asking for where is the right place for reinforcement in the retaining wall. So you've got your options here, A, B, C, D, and here's your retaining wall. This is more of a theory type question. There's nothing really to solve here. But what you need to be thinking about is how this wall is behaving. So if you have soil that is pushing on the retaining wall, what's going to happen to this? What's going to happen is that it's going to want to, I guess, bend over like this, right? It's going to, as soil pushes it, it's going to want to bend over. And the bottom of this thing basically is going to bend something like this. Sorry, this is probably not a good drawing here, but that as that pushes over, it's going to push this, and this whole thing will basically the top will be in tension and the bottom will be in compression. And if you're looking at this piece of the wall, you've got the side being in compression and the back side being in tension. So if you just remember looking at beams, if your beam is looking like this, oh man, sorry. Okay, something like that. This is all in tension. We'll just call it positive. And the bottom is all in compression. We'll call that negative. It's being squeezed in here. This is being stretched out. So same thing that's happened here. Now, if you remember, concrete does really well in compression and sucks in tension. So you need reinforcement where it is in tension, which is going to be the back side. So let's look at these options. So A, it doesn't have it in the back, so that's gone. B does not have it in the back side, so that's gone. C has it in the back. D also has it in the back. So now the next option is looking at this bottom piece. So looking at the bottom piece, we know that the top part of it is in tension and the bottom piece is in compression. So we need reinforcement mainly in that the top section of it. And where you're going to get that along the whole length is option C.
So, to summarize, here at LVL, the retaining walls are mostly L-shaped, with the bottom pointing into the soil behind the wall. The question is, did they do the reinforcing correctly? Take a walk. Check it out. There are several sections of wall at independent living and at assisted living. They are not all the same. The exam on this material will be next week. Meanwhile, on to assisted living. Hi, the first thing we notice here at assisted living is that this side is all white. All the insulation is getting done. And on the roof, look, there are ducts, not ducts. The worst thing that could happen in assisted living is to have a merganser on the roof. We'll see it again when we come around, but they're starting work on the retaining wall here too. And if you were sharp eyes, you may have seen that there are wrinkles in the roof. That's worse than having a merganser. And in front of the lobby, we can see that the forms for what we thought was curbing are gone. They must be that they poured the concrete and that those were for drains rather than for curbing. Let's take a little lollygag over toward the back and notice that there are ducts on the roof here. That's ducts, not ducks. And if you look real close, you can see there's a new chimney coming out of the lobby area. Is that from the fireplace? And looking down there, we can see that my wall is the same, still no stucco. But while there's scaffolding, there's still hope, I hope. And on the back side here, we can see that things seem to be wrapping up. They're taking down some of the scaffolding. It looks pretty finished, pretty spiffy. Except for the west end, which is still that depressing yellow. But now that we come down to the very west end, we're going to see that there's lots of activity down here. You can see the retaining wall has started. There are actually blocks in that they've already set, and there's lots of blocks sitting along waiting to be put in. Here at the end, you get a nice long shot looking along the retaining wall toward the east. See you next week.